right, we are live with a special Tuesday night edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. This is a live reaction show to the initial release of the first college football committee's playoff rankings. And where FSU is ranked is probably what we're going to be spending most of our time reacting to, but we've got a lot of stuff to talk about other than that over the next hour and 7 to 10 minutes, as this show will go on to at least 8 o'clock. But my name is Pat Burnham. I will be your host tonight. I am joined by Osceola senior writer Curt Weiler in the middle of my Brady Bunch box. Next to
who is the maid on the Brady Bunch? That feels like who I am.
Yeah. Next to him is Osceola managing editor Bob Ferrante. Down below me is either one of the new heavyweight champions of the world or Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. And then, of course, joining us in the lower right-hand corner is Osceola publisher Jerry Kutz. All right, guys, first of all, it's hard to believe that we are outside of week 9 going into week 10 of the college football season. But obviously this is a big day for college football fans all across the country because we finally get to a poll that actually matters. But how fired up are you guys to see where the rankings are? And we're going to, in a second, for the folks that are watching us, we're going to show you our rankings, and then we're going to talk about them and why we ranked who we did, where we did, as we work our way to, we think, around 7:35 or 7:40. I'm not sure what Mark's got going on over there, but
I think that might have been Jerry.
Well, Jerry, whoever. But anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about where we are with our rankings individually, and then of course we'd love to hear from you if you have a comment or a question. Obviously, hit the comments, and we've already got a couple already. Daniel Mitchell is ready to go, and he says this is the first time he is watching a college football playoff show since 2014. So we know, and I'm assuming he means since it started. I mean, it started in 2014, right? That was the first.
That was the only time. It's probably the only time we cared.
Well, and my thing is, I mean, I'm excited because I started part-time covering Florida State in 2015. This is the first time I've had to cover a team that was really in this conversation by this time of the year. So,
this team will be in this conversation for the next 4 to 5 weeks,
sure.
Maybe beyond.
I know I'm a lot more excited about it than I was 2 years ago.
Were you watching 2 years ago? Were you debating then? Or were you like, I wonder who's going to be number one?
Well, I know this. This is the first time we've ever done this show in the 4 years since we rebranded the Osceola as a website. So it's certainly fun from that regard, and it's exciting about where this program has come, and we'll talk a little bit about that throughout the show because certainly, guys, in 2020, I'm not sure coming out of that season, maybe even 2021, we would have thought we'd been hosting a show talking about the FSU and the college football playoff. It's a remarkable run this team is on under Mike Norvell. If you go all the way back to 2023, I believe they're now 18 of the last 21 ball games they have won. So it's been a remarkable run. But, Mark, as a former player that's really paid close attention to this, and obviously you're an analyst for us, but I would like for you to take that part of yourself out of the equation and just talk as a former player what this means to you, that we're actually sitting down waiting to find out where Florida State is ranked in the college football playoff rankings.
No, I mean, all is right with the world for me, right? I mean, FSU is in the mix, relevant nationally. It just feels right, and as a former player, I can say I'm so proud of these guys. I'm proud of the way they represent the university and the team. I'm proud of the way that they fight every week. I'm proud of the way that they pushed through the last 3 years. So this is the fruit of their rewards, and they deserve it.
Yeah. Jerry, you've been around this program since, you started the Osceola in 1982. You've owned the Osceola now twice. It's the longest publication dedicated to the coverage of Florida State athletics. You've worked for 19 years with the Boosters, raising money for this program. You've seen it go through some meet times here since 2015. What does this mean to you?
Means I'm old.
Yeah, there's a lot of us trying to catch up with you, buddy.
Hey, I'm catching up with that beard there, brother. I promise you.
Good Lord. Well, it just, Mark said it best. I mean, when you're, and there's a lot of people listening to this that have an investment too. You don't have to be a booster employee or an Osceola rider or former player to have an investment. I mean, a lot of our fans have spent a lot of money and a lot of time, had a lot of heartbreaks over the years. I mean, they're as emotionally invested as anybody. And so I think speaking on behalf of them, it's gratifying. I mean, it's just, it's a fulfillment of a dream.
Yep. All right, Bob and Curt, I'll ask you guys. You guys have been covering the program for a while. When Mike Norvell took over the program in 2020, did you think that we would be talking about Florida State being a potential college football playoff his fourth season in Tallahassee?
No, I mean, honestly, there were times in 2021, obviously September, that Jacksonville State loss where we thought, man, is it going to happen? Is this the guy? I think this night is in part validation for Mike Norvell. The job isn't finished. The work isn't done. I think he wore the work shirt today, which is maybe appropriate, on the practice field. But it really does show that his vision came true, that the hard work, not cutting corners, has been the right way to do it. Some people might say on a national scale, he cut some corners through the transfer portal, but he's done a darn good job of having a very high batting average there. He's picked the right quarterback to build this team around, to bring in playmakers to fight with him. Jordan Travis has been surrounded with really, really good players. So offense, defense, special teams, it's been really a story of all three phases improving. I reflect back, Pat, we always talk about past shows and what we've said. 2021, I remember saying, I want this team to be fun to watch for the fans. I want this team to be competitive. It was almost like we were trying to say, we want this team to be something that the fans could be proud of. I think the fans have really bought in, literally, with their time, with their money, coming to games, coming to Tallahassee. It really does feel very cool that the fans have really made that kind of investment toward this program.
Well, listen, and we saw evidence of that in Wake Forest 4 years ago when I covered that game in 2019. There were virtually no Florida State fans there. Jared Verse told me after the game on Saturday that he was walking by one of the Wake Forest players at some point during the game and asked the kid from Wake Forest, does this seem like an away game from you, because there were so many Florida State fans in the stands. But Curt, you're just, what did you think? You've covered the program now for a while, but did you think Mike would have this team to the playoffs or near the playoffs in his fourth year?
No, it's been impressive to witness, and there is that clear. It feels like, obviously the Jacksonville State game feels like a bit of a delineation point, but obviously things didn't immediately get well from there. I think I saw it on Twitter the other day, and it really drove home. First 2 years, 8-13. Last 2 years so far, like his third and fourth years, 18-3. That is a pretty remarkable flip of how quickly kind of the light switch came on and things got rolling. And like Bob talked about, he did a really impressive job. Roster retention, I think, is a big thing. And not to say that I think so many people have made NIL about recruiting, and they somewhat go part and parcel. But a large part of, I think, what Mike did that's very smart that not nearly as many people did is roster retention through NIL. And I think that's a big deal that has paid dividends on this year's team with how much experience they have. I remember a couple of years ago where it was in the game notes every week of this is the youngest roster in college football. It's not the case anymore. And that's because of what Mike Norvell and his staff have done.
Yeah, listen, it's been fascinating to watch, and obviously the transfer portal has certainly helped, and the NIL has too, and NIL, as you said, Curt, is about retention and attraction. We can't really talk about the attraction from a high school standpoint because that's not supposed to happen. I think we're all smart enough to realize that it does, and for every program. But it certainly has had a benefit to Florida State on the transfer portal. And listen, as we always said, kids want to go, players want to go. We've got to quit calling them kids because they're paid. They're adults, right? They've taken a job, but certainly the NIL has been a big part of this. But players want to go whether they're making money or not. They want to go to where they're winning, and that's one of the reasons we have seen Florida State be successful on the recruiting trail as we get ready to go to the 2023 signing class and obviously through the portal. All right, so the show has started. So what we're going to do is we're going to start unveiling, or what do they use? What's the new term when you present something new, like when you're having a baby? The reveal. This is our reveal. This is our reveal of our rankings. So we're going to start in order, and by order, I mean we're going to start with the boss. Jerry, we're going to let you talk about your top 6 teams and why you ended up where you did. And here we go. Jerry Kutz has Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, FSU number 3, Ohio State number 4, and then he moves out west for 5 and 6 with Washington and Oregon. Jerry, just obviously we got plenty of time. They have not even started the top 20 through 25. How did you come to where you're at with your top 6 after week 9?
You want me to explain all 6?
Well, you can let's go. Yeah, just yeah. We'll get as far as
methodology.
I picked Georgia because they, until they're beaten, they're number 1. I've got Michigan right now, number 2, and I'm not sure I like Michigan. I mean, I just don't know them yet.
Did somebody have? Did you have special effects for when you announced Georgia as your number 1?
That's right. Mark hit the dog with a cattle prod.
That was well played by somebody.
So I've got Michigan. I think like everybody else, we haven't seen them. I want to see them play a really decent team, but they have dominated the mediocre teams, and that's that tells you a little bit of something. But
we're starting, FYI.
I got what's that?
Yep.
Oh, we're starting. Okay.
Yep.
Starting at 25. It's going to be a minute, but
yeah. Number 3, I had Florida State. I just think Florida State is a very good team, and I like their balance. I'll talk about that in a minute. 4, I had Ohio State, and I think that's how these guys are going to rank it. I'm not real keen on Ohio State. I don't think they're very explosive, and I don't think they have a lot of team speed on defense. So their game against Michigan is going to be a play-in game for one or both of them. So we'll see. And then number 5, I had Washington, because Washington is the most unbalanced good team I've ever seen. They're number 1 in passing offense and number 116 in passing defense.
They got 3 NFL receivers.
And how they beat Oregon, being that one-dimensional, is beyond me. But we'll see. And then after that, I've got Oregon.
All right. Well, so they're already through 16. So Curt, I know they're blowing through this. I know you have something that you're trying to work on for post show. So we'll go to you second. Curt Weiler has Ohio State 1, Florida State 2, Michigan 3, Georgia 4, Washington 5, and Texas 6. Curt, the methodology, babe.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what they've done this year. Sorry, I'm looking at my TV. I think it comes down to what they've done this year. Georgia, I'm not as great as it is that Georgia's the 2-time defending champs. What bearing should that have on this year's college football playoff? It should be off what this year's team has done. And this year's team has kind of played with its food a little. I think if we wanted to pull up the dreaded game control, they're the worst of the 5 Power 5 unbeatens in game control, which seems to be a metric that matters to the committee. And they haven't played they have a pretty soft schedule. Them and Michigan both have pretty soft schedules. Why I had them above Ohio State and FSU that have more impressive wins to date. Washington's really started playing around lately. That's kind of why I have them out, even if they have maybe the most impressive win in Oregon. I mean, they all played around, almost lost to Arizona State and Stanford the last 2 weeks. And then Oregon. We're already at 10. Wow. For me, I don't know where y'all are at. I'm already at Ole Miss 10.
They're flying. They're flying through. All right. So, we'll move to the man with the hoodie on. I think he's channeling his inner Mike Norvell. We'll go to Mark Salva. And Mark has Georgia 1, Florida State 2, Washington 3, Ohio State 4, 5 Michigan, and 6 Oregon. Mark, how'd you get there?
Eye test, strictly eye test. It's who do I think would win if they play, everybody played, and going with the unbeatens. I think if Georgia plays their best, and I think the way Carson Beck is improving, even without Brock Bowers, I don't know who can beat them. I really don't. I think they're the best team if they play their best. They've got good balance running. Beck can throw it. The defense is suffocating. They've got depth at just about every position. So to me, I think they're the best team. And then I go to us for the same reason. In a close game, who do you want the ball in the hands of that can pull it off? And I think Jordan Travis is the difference for us. And I think if it's a close game with any other team, I think he would pull it off. And then Washington, they can score on anybody. I think, and then OSU and Michigan, I'm kind of with Jerry on this. I just don't, Michigan really hadn't played anybody, so I really don't know how good they are. And that'll work itself out as they play Penn State and as they play Ohio State. Ohio State has some good wins. They've got depth. They've got everything except a great quarterback. They got a great receiver, but I just don't think they have the quarterback to pull it off. And then Oregon is really the best of the rest. I think really, honestly, I think Oregon would beat a lot of the teams in the top 5, in my opinion. But
I agree with you.
Even though they lost to Washington, I think if that was a neutral field or a home, or if that was out in stadium, they would have won the game.
All right.
I think they're going to commercial before revealing the top 6, so this is timing out pretty well.
Yep. So we'll move to Bob. Bob has Georgia 1, Florida State 2, Ohio State 3, Washington 5, Washington 4, Michigan 5, and Oregon 6.
Yeah, the tough one here for me is Michigan, only because they're playing really well against not so good teams. I really do think that Ohio State-Michigan game being at the back end of the schedule obviously is going to clarify a lot of this, but it's also sort of questioning how I view Michigan at this point on October 31st. As Mark's saying, it's about the eye test, it's about the optics. Coaches will say this is a process business to get the results. But I think right now we are in that optics world with a lot of these teams, a lot of these schools. I'm kind of with you guys. I don't want to reiterate too much what you're saying about Georgia. But for me, Florida State, Curt and I have mentioned this in some of our stories. They've beaten a lot of the FPI, the ESPN FPI top 30 teams. That's LSU, Clemson, Duke. So while they're not all ranked in the AP or the coaches poll, they're respected wins. Even if you're looking at 4-4 Clemson and saying how good is Clemson, I think you still have to give a Florida State a lot of credit for a win over a Clemson.
At Clemson.
That's Clemson's 4 losses. That's the only one at home this year.
That's all right.
The other 3 are on the road.
Yep.
Well, they're fixing to have another one on Saturday.
Probably, yeah. Probably. Not a sure thing, but probably.
No, it's not a sure thing.
Dabo is trying every trick in the book to motivate that team. I tell you.
Listen, after watching some of these games this year, including one that Florida State played in, there are no sure things.
It'll say a lot of what's happening behind the scenes, how that team comes out.
Oh, here we go. I'm up. It's up for me. I think they're about to do it, guys.
All right, here we go.
Oregon.
Number 6.
Hey, let's listen to what they're having to say, too, on this.
All right, well, while you guys are listening, I will go ahead and go through my top to get it out of the way while they finish that up. And we'll obviously – I had Georgia 1, Washington 2, because they have the most impressive win of anyone over Oregon. And Oregon, if there was any other one-loss team, Oregon slides in to above Florida State, Michigan, Washington, Georgia. But Georgia, to go back to your point, they've won I think they've won 25 games in a row now. They blew out Kentucky and Florida. I'm not sure that any other team, and we say it's a soft schedule, and we're fixing to find out they still have some tough games left ahead. I'm not sure any of the 3 teams I have ranked behind them could go through that schedule undefeated. They still have Tennessee and Missouri to play, so we will find out.
4.
All right, then I'm going to be just about dead on, I think. Oh, Washington's out. I was wrong.
Oh, okay. All right. Florida State's in.
I mean, yeah.
That's where I had them. I had them at 4.
I had them at 3.
I did not think they'd put Washington outside the top 4. I am really surprised by that. I had them 2. That win over Oregon was impressive. I'm thinking at 3 they're gonna go with Michigan.
I think at number 3 it's going to be Michigan, and it's entirely about
Michigan.
Somebody just take notes from me.
They look complete, but
Yeah. So far, I'm dead on it, boys. I'm gonna be wrong with Washington. That is going to be Ohio State.
good call, Mr. McElroy.
Is it?
Yep.
Number 3. Now it is
No,
Oh,
I was right.
wow.
football playoff last year.
You guys' computer is faster than mine.
I'm watching on my TV. Yeah.
I do not understand how you rank Ohio State number 1.
Resume. What's weird is
Sorry.
if Ohio State's number 1, I don't think Florida State should be number 4. That's, I guess, what you missed me with. But
Oh wow. Well, I'm listen. Still 3 more weeks to go, but I am shocked that Ohio State is number 1. They look offensively, guys. They have not looked very good. I don't know where their schedule ranks and strength of schedule. Curt, you may know that. You did an article today, I believe, on some of those analytics, but
that was surprised, Curt, that Ohio State is number 1.
Oh, somebody's got their volume up.
I wouldn't be surprised if anybody was
Not
number
me.
1. I think the resume speaks.
Somebody's got
I'm hearing someone's TV come through.
wide
All right.
Where was
That's me.
Notre Dame ranked?
That's me. I was trying to hear why.
I didn't see where Notre Dame was ranked.
Notre Dame
Y'all-
was 15. Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
Bob, if you can Facebook that, it's on Twitter. It's on the homepage. I'm added to the board. We can do a little work talk while we're on here. I got the story up.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that happened a lot faster than I thought it was. I thought
I
we were going to.
remembered them kind of moving through it. Yeah, like
What
I think
are they
they're-
going to do with the next 45 minutes of their show?
I think they're interviewing. They're interviewing the committee chair, Boo Corrigan. They're just going to talk plenty.
Oh, you know what? They're going to spin around all these coaches too. They're going. I guarantee you, they got reporters in some of these locations, or at least going to teleconference. I would think. I don't know. It's been so long. It's been a year since I've seen this show, so I'm not. Well, all right. So listen, we didn't even get a chance to go through our rankings, but what was out of the top 4? What was your? Let's do it this way, Jerry. What was your biggest surprise out of the college football playoff committee's top? Let's go 6.
Ohio State number 1. I had them at 4. I wasn't surprised by 5 and 6 being Washington and Oregon. But I think Ohio State number 1 is a surprise. I was trying to hear what Herb Street's justification for that was.
He's a graduate from there.
Yeah, he is. But he I think what I heard him say was it wouldn't have surprised him if any one of those teams were number 1.
Yeah,
I think Washington being left out is the biggest surprise to me. I mean, they had the most impressive win, I think.
They've struggled the last few weeks, though. They barely beat that Arizona State team, and they barely beat Stanford. We were watching that Stanford game, Pat, in Winston-Salem.
Yeah. Listen,
guess.
maybe 2 close wins, but I think their win over Oregon was more impressive than Florida State's over LSU, certainly over Duke. Florida State's had its own close game against Boston College, and obviously did not play a fully loaded Duke team. So I don't know. I think Washington's one of the top 4 teams in the country. I'm with Mark. That's my eye test. That's 50-something years of watching football almost every day of my life. Listen. It's what makes this sport so great. As our rankings show, we see things different ways, and we spend a hell of a lot of time together. But this is the reason they need to go to 12. This is exactly the reason they need to go to 12 teams, which is what they're doing next year. And listen, then the conversation gets to 13 and 14. But
I was going to say that's all
that'll change.
13 and 14.
But less people have legitimate arguments as you move back further in the rankings. But yeah, listen, I'm with you, Jerry. Ohio State being ranked number 1 is shocking to me. I don't think they beat Georgia. I don't think they beat Michigan. I don't think they beat Florida State. Don't think they beat Washington. I don't think they beat Oregon.
I think their defense is dominant, like maybe best in the country.
They're outstanding. There's no doubt about
they
that.
They have Marvin Harrison Jr.
They don't have the quarterback to
I agree with you there. I'm not sure
that's
Ohio State to win the title because of Kyle McCord. Like I mean, you put Jordan Travis and Marvin Harrison Jr. together, and that team is winning the national title. You know, like I mean,
who's the last team to win with an average quarterback? Alabama, probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
McCarron or Blake Sims
or Greg McElroy or
right.
The kid that transferred from here.
Coker.
Everybody they won with outside of Jalen.
It's true. It's
true. Right.
And Tua.
And they did it largely with great defense.
Right. But that was a little while ago, right? I mean, modern offense, modern football, it's all about the quarterback. And you know, they don't have one. And I don't care how good Marvin Harrison is. If you don't have a guy throwing him the ball, it doesn't matter. Now, I don't care how good their defense is. Any of these teams on here, I don't think they're going to be able to outscore them. Yeah, right? I think every one of these teams is – I mean, I know we can score on anybody. I think Georgia can score on anybody. Michigan, I don't know. Washington, I know can score on anybody. Right? They got a great quarterback. They got 3 pro receivers. They got offense galore. Now, they might lose because I guess.
Well,
so. If they did okay against. I mean, they did good enough to beat Oregon.
They did.
Pretty good.
And that was my thing with Washington is they definitely, I think, have the best one of the bunch. I think if you look at the rest of who they've played, it's not an especially impressive. I think who they've played is that Oregon, and then there's a pretty severe drop off to where Florida State, even if it wasn't 100% Duke or I mean, Clemson is not clearly Pete Clemson at this moment in time. When you look at, I mean, they played Boise State, which hasn't aged well. They played Michigan State, which hasn't aged well. They played Tulsa, Cal, Arizona. Oregon is the one, Arizona State and Stanford. That's, I mean, they're about to have a murderer's row where, I mean, if they win all their games left, they will absolutely be in the top 4. But
well, they've easily got the best win of anybody in that top 6. I mean, that went over Oregon. And listen, if I gave a lot of these teams benefit of the doubt because they are undefeated, I think Oregon beats Florida State, Michigan, and Georgia. I went with
on a
the
neutral
chalk.
field.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix, and listen, they have what Washington doesn't have, and is a defense. Listen, and here's the other thing: Washington, whether they have close games or not, outside of Arizona State, they have rolled it up on offense, similar to the way Florida State has, and even in more impressive fashion. The reason I think Michigan is better than Ohio State, awful schedule, but we talk about the game control metric. They've scored. Their closest game is 24 points. They've had no close games.
But look, hey, the Big Ten outside of Ohio State and Penn State is a bunch of Wake Forests. That's what they are. And so that doesn't impress me one bit. How much they've controlled it. It really doesn't, in my opinion. So they got a 3-game schedule, and it's getting ready to happen. And I'm sorry, having Ohio State and Michigan in there, I just think is a farce. Just because, I know everybody thinks highly of the Big Ten, but I don't. And I saw, I went up to that Wisconsin game, and I saw Wisconsin live and in color. I was not impressed. So that doesn't get a lot of weight for me. I'm sorry.
Well, so are you saying that Florida State's schedule is that much stronger than Michigan's?
Yeah, when we played them, for sure. I mean, I think look, I know
Florida State is going to have one ranked team on its resume as it ends right now.
Okay, but look, Virginia Tech hadn't lost since us, right? Since they found drones, Virginia Tech, right? So what if they went out, right? And that becomes a really good win for us. Duke, I think, was really good. Now that I assume they must have been pretty beat up after playing us, and they had nothing left for Louisville, right? At Louisville, Clemson's had the worst luck. I mean, of any team, and like Curt said, all their other 3 losses were on the road. We beat them at home, and when their back was against the wall, they were still feeling pretty good about themselves.
Well,
I mean, so you throw some context around some of these games, And and look at Washington. I don't know the context of Washington's close games. I don't know if they were missing people. I don't know if they had a flu bug going around. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just know that if everybody played their best, right? If Washington played their best, if we play our best, I mean, that's kind of how I kind of look at it. But what do I know?
Well, hey,
if
Virginia Tech makes it to the ACC championship game and wins out, that's
that'd be something, wouldn't it?
That's not, that'd be something, all right. It's not good it's not good for Florida State.
You talk Michigan's strength of schedule. It was in my story that I ran this morning. Right to current who they played so far, Michigan is 111th out of 133 in strength of schedule. Now, in remaining strength of schedule, they're one because they have Penn State and Ohio State. And frankly, I think they should have to win both those games to get in. We'll see if they do it. I do worry a bit that Ohio State, Michigan at 1 and 3 is already setting the table for, both those teams are going to get in no matter who wins that game. It's just the winner and the team who goes on to the Big Ten championship will be in a higher spot like last year. Last year
that's what worries me.
If you're right about that, Florida State's got to be 13-0.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, no question.
100%.
And listen,
I think this
13-0, and they've got to play an 11-win Louisville team. After that, it gets murky.
I think Florida State being 4 tonight confirms to me, Florida State better not lose a game.
Yeah,
because clearly, I think we were all a little higher on their resume than the committee is. I'll be interested. I've got to hop off here in a bit to hop on the call with Boo Corrigan, the head of the committee. I'm curious what he says about Florida State's resume because I think we all thought higher of it than clearly the committee did.
Well, tell Boo that I said boo. Because, as usual, the College Football Playoff Committee totally screws it up. I mean, I'm sure they've added Taylor Swift to the committee. There's probably no telling who's on that committee right now. But, listen, Ohio State #1 that's a farce. We've all watched Ohio State. We've all got questions. I think we're all fairly well educated. I think we've all, outside of Curt, who's got a #1. Does anybody else have a #1?
Nailed it. It's not my personal thought. It's what I thought they would do. I just thought they would carry that same logic over to.
And reiterate, Curt, you had a good reason for that. Reiterate that if you would.
Yep.
Yeah, they're #1 in the country in strength of record. Which strength of record basically measures how likely it is that an average team, an average top 25 team, would have your record with the teams you played. Now, Florida State's #2 in strength of record. I would have thought that might carry over to Florida State. It didn't, but I mean. They won at Notre Dame, even if they shouldn't have, even if they got lucky, even if Notre Dame side only put 10 players in the field. They pretty handily, I feel like, they were by a good bit the better team against Penn State. Now, who knows what you think of Penn State, and the season will show that a bit. I mean, they almost lost to Indiana on Saturday. And, I mean, I think that Wisconsin wins also, I think, a FPI top 30 win. So I think, I mean, with LSU and Clemson and Duke kind of not helping Florida State somewhat and taking up some losses after those games, Florida State's resume has taken some hits, whereas Ohio State's hasn't as much.
Well, being in the ACC is almost like, I mean, I think that shows what the committee thinks about the ACC. I don't think they give it much respect if you got two teams from the Big Ten in those rankings, knowing that one of those teams is going to lose. To your point, maybe that's foreshadowing of what's going to come out after the final week of the season. But I think it hurts Florida State that Clemson's 4-4. Lucky, unlucky. I think it hurts that Duke is lost 3 in a row, I believe now, or 2, 3 of their last 4, something like that. Yeah, I think the committee just delivered a message to the how they feel about the ACC with Florida State #4.
Yep.
Okay, Boo's coming up.
Who knows? Maybe he'll sneak NC State in before.
Here's the quote from Boo Corrigan just now. I'm not able to listen and talk to y'all, but he on Ohio State being #1. He said the win at Notre Dame, the win over Penn State, top 5 defense. They've got difference makers on offense all across the board. Ohio State deserves to be #1. Now, I agree with you, Mark. They do not have a difference maker at quarterback, and I think that'll get them either against Michigan or in a playoff setting.
Well, I think the bottom line, if Clemson needs to beat Notre Dame, and that'll taint their good win, right? So that'll help. Who was the other good win?
Penn State.
Penn State.
Who's probably not. They might lose to Michigan, but are they going to lose another game? Because I tend to agree with you. I mean, there is a steep drop off after those 3.
No, they won't lose another game. They won't. They got all their eggs in the Michigan basket. So, I mean, which tells me I think you guys are right. Even if they lose, they're at the end. They still may get in, and that would be a shame.
It'll be dependent on. So, if Georgia wins out, if Florida State wins out, if Washington wins out, that won't happen. I don't think. I can't imagine they would put a one-loss one of those 2 teams.
No, but I don't think that'll happen either.
But I tend to agree. Odds are Florida State or Georgia or Washington. Washington, I think, is the most likely. Will pick up a loss, and then we could very well be in for 2 Big Ten teams for the second straight year.
And that's the shame of this conference right now is that if we go one loss, we don't have a shot.
Yep. And the other side of that, the other hypothetical I feel like is Alabama wins out, beats Georgia in the SEC title game. Are they leaving out 1-loss Alabama or 1-loss Georgia?
Yep.
Oh no.
Like these are all the things we got to discuss. These are all the possibilities.
To your point, let's assume Georgia goes through the regular season undefeated, and then loses a 1-loss Alabama team. Are we looking at 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams in this damn thing?
No,
I hope not. I hope not, but it's plausible.
We're undefeated and Washington's undefeated now.
I was going to say, yeah.
Let me ask you this. This is all about conjecture, right? At this point, let's talk about this. All right, so let's say that Louisville. All right, so my argument today on Takeaway Tuesday is we all need to be cheering for Louisville to come to that ACC championship game 11-1 and ranked inside the top 10, and Florida State needs to beat them to cement their spot in the college football playoff. I think you got to pull for Louisville if you're a Florida State fan, and you got to pull for Florida and Miami to win every game left on their schedule except for Florida State.
Good luck getting Florida State fans to cheer for either of those teams. I understand the reasoning, but good luck.
Well, there's a balcony view for that. I understand that.
No, yeah.
I have it for Miami too, and I'm gonna have but I mean Louisville, I believe, plays Miami, don't they? Still, yes.
I think so.
Yeah. So, but that would be the only game I would pull for Miami against if I'm a Florida State fan, because you need that strength of schedule to continue to rise. And I think you want as many teams on your schedule ranked at the end of the year as possible.
I get that. I think my thing comes down to, I just think it's going to be a matter of, I guess it matters for seeding, how many ranked teams you beat, how many teams are in that top 25. But I think it's going to be, I mean, is Florida State undefeated? They're in. Is Florida State 12-1? They're probably out.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I don't know how much the cheering matters. I guess it might matter seeding if you could be 4 versus 3, but I think by the same token, you're going to have to probably beat 1 and 2 anyways, or you're going to have to beat 2 good teams if you make the playoffs. So
I agree with it. Florida State needs to be 13-0, but I think it helps their argument if they do beat you don't want them playing a 8-4 Virginia Tech team in the first non-divisional championship. I mean, listen, I said this the other day. The ACC has found a way to go coastal even without divisions. Everybody thought going into this year it was a given that it was going to be Florida State and Clemson, or Florida State and North Carolina, or Clemson and North Carolina in that championship game. And Clemson is, if they have picked the perfect way to get back at Florida State. They have picked the perfect way to get back at Florida State by going. Listen, there's a chance they could go 5-7.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can lose to Notre Dame. They can lose to North Carolina, who I think they still got to play, and they can lose to South Carolina. I don't know who the other game is.
They got Notre Dame.
That'll be a pillow fight.
Hey, I think what they should do.
It's at South Carolina.
For South Carolina Clemson, I don't think they play the game. They just put Shane Beamer and Dabo Swinney out on a podium, and whoever handles tough questions better from the press and fan base wins the ball game. Because they are melting down. Now, listen, my reaction to the whole Dabo thing is I ain't taking that shit from 11-year-old kid either.
Here's the thing. Like listening to that caller, the caller way overstepped a few times, and I get it. But why did somebody let the caller talk that long? Is my number one. Like, is the person who's on the line where you can dump people? Are they agreeing? They must be agreeing with what Tyler said. If they let
Exactly, that's exactly what.
But also,
Clemson's looking for a show
Dabo
call.
pissed that guy off.
I get why Dabo did it, but if you're Dabo, you have to take the high road. You have to. It's not. It's a tough
what are the
moment,
yeah.
but
what are
you
the chances that what are the chances that caller was a South Carolina fan anyways?
Listen,
Probably 50-50.
He's not.
Clemson
Our Clemson rival site today talked to him. He has been a subscriber of their site for a long time. He is a Clemson fan.
Right.
Yeah, Clemson's trying. That was a plant, like the girl at the San Diego Chargers game.
Oh my gosh.
They were trying to find a way to get him fired with calls. It was a plan by a big booster that wants him gone.
We had that same thing happen.
That's not what it
We had that same thing happen on the Jimbo Fisher show one night.
And Jimbo, to be fair, Jimbo, I don't even think talked. I think Gene just shut that down right away when it was the Jimbo, where's the loyalty?
Jimbo was always writing with his little Sharpie on his piece of paper, like he was trying to draw up a play to gain a yard when he needed 2 yards.
Well, my favorite part of the whole Jimbo situation when that happened was Jimbo, I don't even think he answered it. Gene just shut it down. Gene was like, we're not going there. And everyone booed him and the guy got escorted out. And the next day, Jimbo does I think a Sirius XM interview and throws Gene under the bus. He's like, I would have answered it. Gene Deckerhoff didn't let me answer it.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
That is the stuff that's going on in South Carolina is pretty funny. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this because I wrote about it on Takeaway Tuesday. I don't think we've talked about it as a group. I've had a hard time finding out where my moral compass stands with Jim Harbaugh and the big blue line, the thin blue line, the line in the sand, however you want to call it. What are y'all's thoughts on this? Because I'll just give you my argument as why I'm not overreacted or having an emotional reaction to it. I know that everybody that played this week, everybody that plays a football game this week is calling their buddies that have played the opponent they're playing and asking, do you have signals for these guys? Are there any tells that they have? Yada, yada, yada. Everyone's looking for an advantage. So how do we define cheating? Because they're doing the same thing. They're just doing the work themselves. And now, is it over the top? Yes.
It's a systematic, intentional breaking of the rules, right? You can't send somebody to another game. That's the rule. It's clear cut to me. Yeah. And it's calling to your buddy or getting something off of TV or even off of game film. That's different, right?
There's no rule.
We always used to get the TV copy. I remember Chuck Amato making sure he always wanted the TV copy on Sunday. He'd go into our video guys, hey, you guys got a TV copy of the opponents, and he'd watch the TV copy because he's looking for an edge on signals and stuff, right? It's things you can hear on checks, stuff like that. That's nothing wrong with that. That's publicly available knowledge. But when you systematically buy tickets to games of your opponents and future opponents and possible opponents, and have a whole system in place to try to decode signals, that's just thumbing your nose at the rules, and to me that's blatant. So that's a big difference than just call, hey man, do you guys got signals? I mean, of course we all do that. Everybody does that.
All right, so so that's a competitive advantage. But there's all sorts of things that happen in college football that are done to provide a competitive advantage. It happens in recruiting. It happens in the transfer portal.
They didn't get caught.
Well, beyond getting caught, it specifically states you cannot go to an opposing game and do that. I mean, it's very clear. A lot of those other things you're talking about, there is no written rule against.
Well, certainly there is. You can't talk to a kid until he's in the portal. That's a rule, and people do it all the time.
But it's not a systematic, intentional, plan. It happens, right?
Well, certainly they plan it. Certainly it's thought out.
You think they sit in a recruiting meeting and say, "Hey, why don't you call this kid over here?" No,
I think that I sit there. I think when they learn a kid may be jumping in the portal, I think they try to find back alleys to the kid. Yes, I certainly do.
Okay.
I don't think they're waiting until John Doe jumps into the portal and say, "Oh God, we got to find a way to get in contact with him." These things are all done in back channels, and it's an organized effort.
And if you get caught, you get in trouble. And that's the problem.
Well, you can't put 130 schools on probation.
Well, but if you get, I mean, if you blatantly break the rule and contact a kid, and there's a record of it, and it comes to light, yeah, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get on probation. That guy's going to get fired.
How many college coaches you know that carry 2 phones, Mark?
I know. And if they still had pay phones, they use pay phones, right? Listen, but that's not the point. The point is, if you do it and get caught, then you're taking a risk. But this was just so blatant. The thing about it was there was so much hubris that was done. They made a plan and knew the risk and knew it was illegal and did it in the wide open. These things you're talking about back channels. This was in the wide open. This was just like, we don't care. We're not gonna, who's checking this? Well, somebody checked.
And it's not the first offense by that same coach.
Oh, listen, they got a lot of problems. Hey, did y'all see today where they have a picture of they think that guy on the Central Michigan bench earlier this year, and with a visitor's bench pass on Central Michigan's bench so that he could watch Michigan State signals? Yeah, now, they have not proved. All right, so that story's even taken on a new wrinkle today. Or what do you guys think should be the punishment for Michigan?
Well, I think let me just say this. If I was Michigan, if you have any integrity at all, and the evidence is as clear as it is, you self-impose. You don't let the NCAA, you don't wait for the NCAA to weigh in. And I think if they don't have the integrity to do that, then I think the Big Ten has. They're the next layer. Everybody wants to blame the NCAA like there's some kind of a police force. The institution has to take personal responsibility.
Well, Jerry,
when the evidence is this clear.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think you're probably right. But here's what I'm going to say: when you're talking about millions and millions of dollars at stake, things like this happen. I mean, these guys are under enormous pressure. Yeah. What's that? Yes, these guys are under enormous pressure to win. The leash has always been short, but it's probably never been shorter. We're going to see some guys that are probably going to lose their jobs later this year that maybe shouldn't have because fans run out of patience. And listen, here's the other thing. Well, we can talk about this later, but I think these schools got to start thinking about these coaching decisions and how quickly they fire somebody because of the way it affects your money with the NIL and who you're giving money to. You're giving money to pay off coaches that aren't working for you. But anyway, yeah, I think
Pat, how about the coaches that Michigan has beat this year after they stole their signals? Every one of those coaches is on the hot seat.
Yep, you're right.
So you have a responsibility when you catch a crook to punish them and make an example of them.
Well, yeah, and to your point, Jerry, now the integrity of the game comes into question.
Exactly.
Right? The integrity of the result comes into question.
I promise you, Vegas isn't happy with it.
Oh, I'll guarantee you they're not. And so that is the greatest sin of all, is that if you put out a product on the field out there where people are doing all this, investing in all this stuff, betting on this stuff.
Well, Harbaugh can find himself swimming with the fishes. Vegas is mad enough.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He better wear some knee pads. He's going to be a Luca Brasi.
Yes.
Hey, let me jump in and ask. I want to ask Mark and Pat a question here before I want to jump off and listen to Boo Corrigan's call at 7:45. I'll put a couple comments and some banners while you guys are talking. But Pat, Mark, you guys have been on the headset. So I have this question for you because Mike Norvell was adamant that he didn't want to have sideline to quarterback headset communication because it takes a little bit of that hands off, that coach player relationship. But in my solution mind, is that somewhat of a solution to rid ourselves of this Michigan type sending a guy to a game? Is there a way where coaches can have this communication? You can cut it off as the play clock ticks down, so you're not talking, with 10 seconds to go as a coach is maybe reading the defense for a quarterback. You can eliminate some of that kind of garbage that might be too much of a coach helping a player. But is there a way to help the electronic communication to alleviate this sign stealing issue, maybe?
I mean, yeah, I heard Norvell's comments on that. That I was taken aback a little bit about it because I never really thought about it. Obviously, the coach to quarterback communication, and then of course you'd have to do it for the defense too.
Right.
Obviously, it would eliminate the sign stealing, right? But still, the quarterback's still has to communicate everything to the players. And if you're still going to go no huddle, he's still going to do hand signals and stuff to the receiver. So you don't totally eliminate it, and there's still verbal stuff. So, it would alleviate it. The only thing that it would help would be the timing of it. You wouldn't have as much time to communicate to the defense or to relate to the defense or the offense, what's getting ready to happen. Right. So in other words, if you signal from the sideline, you still have time because the quarterback has to do that signaling to the rest of the team or make checks or do whatever he needs to do for the play. You just eliminated a layer by going coach to player communication, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it solves it, but I think the reason Mike doesn't want it is because, all right, so they implement the headphone system, coach to players, what they call it. But what it does is, all right, so the NCAA, because you're going to have it on both sides, right? You're going to have it for defense and offense. So at some point, that's got to be cut off. So let's say they choose 15 seconds. Well, just about every play Florida State runs, Mike is making an adjustment after they break the huddle, sometimes up until 7 or 8 seconds before the play clock runs out. So that's why the coaches don't want it, or a guy like Mike doesn't want it, because then that adjustment has to be made, the post-huddle adjustment or post-play call adjustment has to be made by the quarterback if you don't use signals. Now, to Mark's point, I don't think signals would totally go away, but certainly I think signals would be easier to pick up if they were coming in on film or in person or however it's going to be done off television copy. I do think that it would be easier because you're going to have less signals, right? You're going to signal in your adjustments, and you're going to have to be quick because you only got.
I was going to say, I think another reason why Mike might be against it is because he thinks he has an advantage of the way he teaches quarterbacks and the way he prepares his quarterbacks, where this can be used as a crutch for coaches that are not as adept at coaching quarterbacks and preparing quarterbacks as Mike thinks he is, right? Which I would argue that he's pretty good because Jordan definitely has mastery of this offense, right? And so now other teams that may not be quite as adept would have an advantage with that communication. To your point, Pat, whatever that cutoff time is.
Yep.
I mean, you could be up on the line of scrimmage, right when the ball's marked for play, and if you got a whole 10 seconds, on a 25-second clock, you got 10 seconds to talk to a quarterback. You line up like you get ready to run a play, and defense is going to line up. Now you can talk to them. Say, okay, we got this, we got that, we got this. You call this play, and you're probably going to get this.
Well, it changes everything you do, right? Because most college teams don't even huddle anymore.
Right.
I mean, most of them are going to the line, and they're getting.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The ball's marked for play. They're on the line already in their next formation with when the ball's marked for play, 25 seconds. And if the cutoff is at 15, you got 10 seconds. You can line up, see the defense, and pretty much tell your quarterback who to hit, when to hit. You're going to get this. Looks like single high, man under. I'm gonna run this. You hit the crosser after he clears. You know what I mean? And so you could get that communication in 10 seconds easy.
Listen. I'm old school. I played in a college system that if we lined up in the eye, you knew it was going to be, and the tight end was to the right, you knew it was going to be one of about 4 or 5 running plays. In high school, we only ran 4 plays. That was it. We ran a trap, a counter, a sweep, and a belly, and that was it. And we ran it to both sides, so we had 8 total plays. there wasn't. It was the best. The kid with the teams with the toughest kids won, and the most disciplined teams won. And when I played college football and high school football, now these offenses have so many different options with the RPO and the way the game is evolved. It's different. The coaches have more influence on a play call than they ever had before, and offenses are much more creative and much more dynamic and much more diverse. But yeah, to answer your question, Bob, I think that if they get into this and they realize this is widespread, then yes. And I think I think the college football, the head coaches that make off or comprise on the rules committee have to be the ones to drive whatever change is necessary. But I don't know how rampant this is. I do know these phone calls are made on a weekly basis, that these people are asking for. I did it when I was a GA. I did it when I was at South Florida. If I knew somebody that would coach on the other staff, I was asked to make a call, see what you can find out. So these things have been going on one way or the other for years. And yes, what Michigan has done is over the top, and we'll find out where it leads. And I think where it's going to lead is I think it's going to lead Jim Harbaugh back to the NFL. And one of the best jobs in all of college football is going to be open about December 8th or January 15th, depending on where Michigan goes into the playoffs. But I think that's where this thing is going. And I think if listen, they've already got the other investigation about illegal use of a laptop. We'll find out what that is about. If you believe the reports, they've already stopped negotiations on a long-term contract for Jim Harbaugh extension, but Harbaugh has come out and said that's not the case. But yeah, listen, technology, the game has been changed. We changed fundamental components of the game for lesser reasons due to technology. We have started cutting plays out of the game to appease advertisers. We're fundamentally changing the way the game is played. Coaches may have to deal, whether they like it or not, with the fact that we're going to have to go to head coach-to-player communication. If I was a coach, I'd be for it, but and I didn't read Mike's comments. I just know enough to know that he's against it. And listen, there's a reason more coaches aren't coming out with hard stances against Harbaugh. Tom Allen's comment the other day was, I think they need to do this. He was certainly against the cheating, but certainly did not come out with they need to do this if they're doing that. But we just need to be men of integrity. And as Mark said,
that would be a good starting point for coaches to become men of integrity.
Yes.
That'd be a real good place to start.
But listen, we all know they do. People do amazing things to try to win a football game, Jerry. You and I have been around a long, long time. It is amazing what grown men will do to win a football game. I
don't respect any of it.
I know that.
Integrity matters.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but I want to get off that point.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is what I wanted to say a minute ago was when they were talking about the signal from the coach to the player with the headset. I wanted to ask Mark, and I think he's off the line now.
Yeah, I told him we'd be on until 8.
But I think Mark might have been coaching when Florida got cited for stealing the signals from the coach in the press box to the coach on the sidelines. They had tapped into the opponent's thing. And NCAA cited them for it. So cheaters are going to cheat.
Yes.
And you got to get them out of the profession. You got to make an example.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that.
So I don't know. I'm pretty hardcore about right is right. And if you just, God dang it, if we would follow the rules a little bit in life, you wouldn't have an NCAA manual that was as big as it is and as many enforcement people as you need to try to enforce basic, 10 commandments.
Yeah, and listen, I think it's funny what the NCAA decides to crack down on and what they don't. I think we do need to have someone else govern the sport. I don't, I think we all know that's probably where this is going as these conference expansion continues to happen. But yeah, listen, it's becoming more like the NFL. And listen, I've read the NFL rulebook when I worked for the Alliance of American Football. That was that was one of my first jobs. They handed me the NFL rulebook and said, "We need you to go through this with a fine-tooth comb, pull out anything you think we need for our league, and pull out anything you think you don't, and we'll talk about it." And but the whole NFL rule book was written for the integrity of the game. It's all about competitive balance, or not. I mean, when I say competitive balance, it's about Sundays being fair to each team. No team had an advantage based off the rules. For example, if somebody's headsets went out during the course that weren't working at the start of the game, the other team could not use their headsets, right? Because that would have been a competitive advantage. Now, after the game started, if something like that had happened, didn't necessarily have to do it, although I think I have seen that happen before where everybody had to pull their headsets off. But yes, I wish that I wish college football had a more equal playing field altogether. Listen, we're still going to see that with NIL, right? Because some NIL programs are going to raise more money than others, and that's a competitive advantage. I'd rather see them, if we're going to legally pay players, let's go to a salary cap. And if you get caught cheating, if a booster's giving money above and beyond the salary cap, then there's something needs to happen. But I think you're right. I think that there's some things that because even in this, Jerry, and you and I both know this, even in this conference that Florida State is in, there's a huge disparity into what Florida State and Clemson can give to a kid over what Wake Forest. Well, I don't know about if Wake Forest is a good example.
That's very complicated because we have to make them employees in order to do that.
Oh yeah. But I'm just saying,
it's a very complicated thing. But following the basic rules, I mean, well, anyway, enough on that.
Yeah. Well, we're getting this could take us forever. Well, listen, we said we were going to cut this thing off at 8 because I know people want to get back to doing it. But listen, Florida State is ranked inside the top 4 at number 4 through the first initial college football playoff committee rankings. So off to a good start. Obviously, Jerry, we know off the fact that they have 2 teams from the Big Ten, it's important for Florida State to take care of their business against Pitt, Miami, and Florida, and then to obviously take care of business in the ACC championship game, which Florida State can lock up against Pitt. But Jerry, just your thoughts real quickly. Obviously, we haven't had a lot of time to study Pitt, but just your thoughts real quickly on Florida State moving forward with the 2023 season and how that schedule sets up for them.
It's a difficult slate, I think. I know that Pitt is struggling in all statistical categories. They've had some surprising wins, but it's on the road, which is not easy. And then you face Miami, who's, I think, a pretty good team. And then you got to go to Florida and Gainesville. Those are 3. I mean, that's at least 2 challenging road trips and 1 home team. That's going to be a tough home game. So I don't know if anybody's. I mean, we face a pretty tough slate. Now, so does I think that Ohio State's got a tough slate. Michigan's got a tough slate. And I looked at Washington.
Yeah,
they've got a tough slate. Yeah. So this to me is kind of like a commitment.
Yes.
In July.
Yeah.
There's a lot of football to be played before. We're thinking we'd have to be undefeated, but if some of those other teams lose, which they're likely to lose, we may not need to be.
Yeah.
But I would feel better. I'd like it if Florida State went 13-0.
Yeah, it would be great.
It'd be like only the second or third time in school history we have.
Yeah. Third, right? 99 did it. Jimbo's team did it. And Mike's team would do it.
Yeah,
isn't that right? 99 was Bobby's only team that was undefeated. Jimbo might have had 2 in the regular season.
Yeah, he did.
And then, so this would be the 4th one. But hey, listen, Jerry, it's just like Mike Norvell said in his press conference on Wake Forest, and I'm glad we didn't totally listen to him, or we would not have had so much fun talking college football for the last hour or so. But he said, listen, there's going to be a number next to our name on Tuesday night. It really doesn't matter what that number is because there's still 4 weeks to go. And it's just like Keon Coleman said when we interviewed him post game. I didn't even know they did a show for that. And so we asked him if he'd be watching, and he said, not if there's an NBA basketball game on. So,
yeah.
Listen.
It doesn't matter to them. It shouldn't.
Well, we cover the program and are / fans of college football, so it does matter to us.
Yeah. And if we weren't in it, I wouldn't have been watching it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I would have caught the cliff notes from somebody after it was over. You're certainly right. I've never watched anything but the last show when it comes to this over the last several years. So yes, I agree. And listen, if you're a football fan, there is a snowy football game either on ESPNU or we got football tonight. I think it's a Maction. But anyway, I just looked at the television screen, and obviously there were some. They just showed what it would be if there was a 12-team playoff, Jerry. I wish there had been a 12-team playoff. Right now they're showing Florida State would have gotten a bye, and they would have played the winner of Penn State, Oregon. Georgia would have played the winner of Ole Miss, Texas. Ohio State would have played the winner of Alabama, Oklahoma, and Washington, Michigan, Tulane. I said this from the start of the season when we realized that there was no definitive number 1 team or top 2 or 3 teams like we've seen the previous 10 years since they instituted the playoff. This would have been the perfect year to bring in 12 teams.
And if I'm not mistaken, that first game is played on the
highest
ranked home team. So if that were to happen next year, we wouldn't have a west sideline.
Yeah.
So we might have to take a pass on that or play.
Can we play in Jacksonville? Can we go to Bragg?
Yeah.
You bring some extra seating.
It's all fun.
Yeah.
And,
listen,
I can't wait for the 12-team playoff.
Hey, we spend a lot of time writing about football, talking about football, and I think we love it. This is just something. This is another reason for us to talk, and I think it makes for great debate. I think it's interesting, as I told people earlier in the show. We all 5 have spent a lot of time together talking football, watching football. We all have an educated opinion, and we all see this thing differently. It's fascinating, and that is going on all over the FSU fan base, all over college football. And I think it's what makes college football fun is these are passionate discussions. People care about their opinions. People care about what people think about their program. And nothing proves that like an hour show on ESPN with rankings that right now are only good for 7 days. So they have the shelf life of 7 days. Well, you're right, because we'll play games 5 days after the rankings come out and won't get the rankings again. Well, 4 days actually, right? We got 4 full days before we play again. So anyway, it's fascinating. But listen, the first rankings are out. If you joined us tonight and have been with us through the entirety of the show, we hope you enjoyed the conversation. Certainly a great time to be a Florida State fan. A lot of excitement around the program as Florida State hits its final 4 games of the year. If you're not an Osceola subscriber, we would certainly appreciate it if you would go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. It'll take you to the same place. Check us out. We've got some free content on there. We've got some content behind the paywall. Curt's got an article on where Florida State, he thought Florida State should be ranked coming into the season. I've got Takeaway Tuesday where I get a little bit of college football playoff talk. Obviously, we have our practice updates every day, practice video. We'll have player features. We've got Pat Narduzzi's comments from his press conference. So please go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com and check us out if you're not an Osceola subscriber already. And if you are, but you're not subscribing to the Osceola YouTube channel, please subscribe to the Osceola YouTube channel before you click off. You can also sign up for notifications where you will get updates and notifications on your phone and by email, letting you know that we're going to go live with a show or have posted a new video. So we appreciate it if you do that. I want to thank Bob, Jerry, Curt, Mark, all for taking time out of their Tuesday to join us, and we hope you will join us next Tuesday as we will do this again, and the Tuesday after that, and the Tuesday after that, until they finish this string out. And, of course, we will be live on Saturday after the Pitt game with first impressions. It'll be me, Mark, and Jerry, I think. We're going to try to get Bob or Curt to join us after they get out of the locker room to kind of give us some feedback on what was said by Coach Norvell and the players. But, again, Florida State, ranked number 4 in the official college football playoff rankings, coming out on October 31st, Halloween. So FSU got a treat and not tricked tonight, and that's a good thing. And we'll be back next Tuesday. Jerry, thanks for joining us, and we hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you after the Pitt game.